Lightning have a serious injury last night as well. Great opening day stories. I look forward to sharing those with you. Just my experience at the ballpark beforehand. The Pat and Aaron show, they talked about it a little bit this morning. Their producer, Sam Cohen, had a interesting interaction with Brian Hartline, and the producer for the Nick Wise show, Tim Barnard, actually witnessed it all go down. And Tim is going to give us his side of the story, which, we heard Sam's side of the story earlier this morning. We'll get Tim's play-by-play analysis on what went down in the awkward moment between Brian Hartline and our producer, Sam Cohen. But apparently he did not find Sam's jokes very funny. But last night, for those of you that know me, I'm in a great mood today. I'm also very tired today. I'm trying to clear my throat. I'm just like, I feel a little bit off. Let me try that again. All right, there we go. I feel off today. Excuse me. I'm trying to drink water. I'm like trying to get trying to regain my voice just from the whole day. So like my voice keeps dropping out. And I feel like I got to keep clearing it like every 10 seconds, which nobody wants to hear that on the air today. So I'll try not to do that too often. But the voice, it took a little bit of a beating yesterday as we got started at Ferg's pretty early on in the morning. I mean, we started there at 6 a.m. before the place even opened, but we were letting people in anyway. Some people were there right at 6 a.m. hanging out with us. And that was just what an opening day in Tampa Bay. Yesterday, that topped it. Just the experience and the emotions and the feelings that we all had towards the Trop. It was just it couldn't have gone any better. And then the Rays pull off of a victory. So we're going to go over that. We're going to spend a majority of the show on opening day and what took place yesterday. But in other things that happened in sports, the Michigan Wolverines have won the national championship in basketball. And I thought overall it was a decent game last night. I know some people were talking about the officiating and they didn't love the calls. And I got to be honest, I felt like the entire Final Four was kind of, not the whole tournament, but the Final Four in general, the refs did call a lot of fouls. And I thought it went both ways. If you go back to the Michigan and Arizona game, it's like Arizona and Michigan both were without their stars for a majority of the game because they were in foul trouble early. And the same thing happened again last night. Now, I will say this, when it comes to teams that foul the most in college basketball, one of the teams that fouls the most is UConn. So I'm not surprised Michigan ended up at the line a lot more than UConn did last night. I thought there were a lot of bad calls that went both ways, and the Stars got in foul trouble again, especially for UConn. But when you look at the overall rankings of who fouls the least, Michigan 38th, UConn was like 238, meaning they foul so much more than the Wolverines. So I wasn't surprised to see the way it played out. It was an ugly defensive battle last night. They played UConn's game. That was exactly the game UConn wanted last night. They got the game they wanted, and it felt like even when, they go into halftime, they're still down by 4, getting the game that they wanted. You're like, how are they still down? This is the pace they want to play. Everything has gone their way. Obviously they found themselves in foul trouble, and other than that, everything was going their way. Now, there was something that I did notice in the first half. And so by the end of the game, Michigan became the second lowest three-point percentage tournament winner ever when it comes to shooting the three ball in the championship game. The only team that had a lower percentage of 3 points made in the national championship game was actually 2011 UConn. And I'm watching that game play out, and I'm watching Michigan put up these shots in the first half, and I felt like the rim rattle was much louder on the basket to the left. Like if you're watching it on TV, where Michigan was going the first half, I felt like the rim was rattling a little bit louder, and I'm like, that rim just feels off. And I'm like, it's interesting to see if that continues into the second half, and if UConn has the same issues. And they did have the same issues. UConn was missing a lot of shots there in the second half going towards that rim. And that rim just sounded, every miss, it just seemed like that rim had a little bit more pop to it. It was just abnormally loud. Now, UConn, towards the end of the second half, started to make a little bit more shots. But when the half started up, they found themselves missing a lot of threes as well. It took them a minute before they finally made one in the second half. And I do think both rims last night were different than each other. Now, both teams had to play each direction, so it evened itself out, but I did feel that rim on that one side was just different, and and it showed that on the stat sheet when you look at the numbers of both teams. But yeah, overall, I thought it was, it was a good game for me. I had a dog in the fight, but I would say probably for the average person, maybe it wasn't the most exciting game. It was a low scoring defensive battle, and I think all you could really ask for is a close game at the end, and you got that. And I love Danny Hurley at the end of the game. He kind of became likable during the tournament. I was talking about this with somebody this morning. I thought his post-game interview was fantastic. Somebody asked him about the referees. And he was like, what is it? He was like, what's wrong with this guy? Is he trying to get me in trouble? And then he answered the question, and he said he doesn't believe they lost because of the fouls. He said, Michigan's a very physical team. We're a physical team. Both teams were playing hard. He felt like they weren't letting enough stuff go, and I tend to agree with him a little bit. I thought there were some good and bad calls in that game. And he said that's not the reason we lost, and give him credit. And it just, I don't know, he didn't blow up last night or have one of his Danny Hurley crazy psychotic moments. Now, he'll finally get that suit fixed. Thank God. Now, if you don't know the story behind Danny Hurley, the UConn head coach, and his suit, he's been wearing the same suit for like the last 30 games. And the jacket, apparently the liner in the jacket is like, it's basically falling apart. He's got to get that thing fixed. And he'll finally get to go do that. And probably take it to the dry cleaners, too, because I'm sure that is just absolutely disgusting at this point, from sweating on the sidelines and just everything that takes place during a game. Even a coach is sweating, and, they got a lot going on. It's not just the players sweating. The coaches are, too. Sweating in their suits, I definitely would be. But, yeah, Michigan's your national champions for 2026, and the way too early rankings for next season already out. This is from ESPN. Michigan number 1, Duke number 2, Florida Gators number 3, and UConn's number 4. Arizona was number 5. And those are your way too early rankings for next year's college basketball season. And that's probably, we probably got a year to go before we talk college basketball on the show again, really. The demand for college basketball is not really there outside of March, but it is one of my favorite tournaments. I thought it was a good tournament. I still hear a lot of people talking about the Cinderellas, and I was listening to Pat and Aaron yesterday, and I heard Aaron bring up something about Cinderellas, and it just feels like there's always a question about, Cinderellas, and why aren't they there, and I miss Cinderella. Nobody likes Cinderellas. You want to say you like them, but nobody really likes Cinderellas, and that was proven in 2023 when you had pretty much an entire Final Four made up of Cinderellas. It was one of the lowest rated Final Fours we had ever watched, and it's because it wasn't, the big name brands. It was the Miami Hurricanes, big name brand, but not in basketball. You had FAU, San Diego State, and of course UConn was the name brand, but it was UConn and then 3 non-name brands, and the ratings weren't good. I just don't think you need Cinderellas, in my opinion, to make a tournament great. In the Sweet 16, I want the 16 best teams. Don't get me wrong. I like seeing the upset in the first on days 1 and 2. Not even day 2, day 1. Actually, no. Day 1 and day 2. The Thursday and Friday. I like upsets there. Round 2, I don't like them. It's cute if a 14 beats a 3 in the opening round. The 14 needs to die on that Saturday or Sunday, though. We don't need to see a 14 seed in the Sweet 16. But yeah, college basketball's changed. It's time to realize that. It is what it is. I've seen a lot of people upset about it. I get it. I like the way college sports used to be, too. But they've changed. And for those programs that aren't going to adapt, like I'd like to see Florida, get a little bit better with the NIL, especially when it comes to basketball. You got to give credit to Todd Golden. They don't spend the most, and they get the most out of their guys, and they were a 1 seed. And out of the 1 seeds in this tournament, they spent the least, and it was by quite a bit. So you got to give props to Todd Golden for how the Gators perform, the last couple of years with the guys that they have, and been able to hold on to them as well. It'll be interesting to see what the Gators can do next year. Can they keep a lot of their guys out of the NBA? That's the question. The Chinniloos and the Condons coming back. It seems like they are. And if they do, I think the Gators have a good team going into next year. Last night in sports, the Tampa Bay Lightning, not one of their best games. They fall to the Buffalo Sabres once again. They lose 4-2. And there was an injury that took place in that game. Holmberg, he kind of got checked. And I've watched this video a bunch of times, and I know John Cooper isn't happy about it. He kind of fell into the penalty box or near the penalty box, and the door of the box kind of came open a little bit. And so his shoulder goes into the boards pretty hard. And here's what John Cooper had to say after the game. He actually thinks the penalty box guy, might deserve to lose his job.
Like I said this morning, you want to be playing well and you want to get through healthy, and that obviously didn't happen again tonight. I don't know who's working the penalty box over there, but I don't know if they should keep their job after what happened there, like leaving the door open. I could have hurt anybody on either team, and those are just dangerous situations. So a little frustrated on my part, to be honest.
So I watched the video over and over, and he does go into the boards, and the door does open up a little bit. And after looking at it, and I must have watched it 20 times, I think he's going to get hurt either way, whether that door opens or not. I almost wondered if the door opening almost broke the fall a little bit more, but then he kind of hits the corner of it. So I don't know if it actually helped the situation either. But I think whether that door opens or not, I think Holmberg's getting hurt. And it didn't look good. Obviously, you don't want your penalty box door ever flying open. But I'm not sure if it really made a difference. It was a brutal fall. It was a brutal fall, and injuries were a problem last night for the Lightning, and they continue to pile up, and it's starting to make you wonder, a little bit, what's this team going to do when it comes time to get to the playoffs? Now, the one team that's had their number in the playoffs the last couple of years, the good news is, well, they're not going to be in the playoffs. There is no Florida Panthers this year. So we have that to celebrate, because that's been our kryptonite the last couple of years, because they continue to get matched up in the first round. They should be playing in the third round. But, NHL has a really screwed up playoff system that I don't like. I'm not a fan of it, and I wish they'd go back to what they were, what they used to do. All these sports seem to want to change things, and they always change them for the worst, in my opinion. But, yeah, not a good game for the Lightning. Unfortunately, they end up with some injuries. And one more thing that happened yesterday, the Twins are kind of getting clowned on in Major League Baseball. I guess it was like Monday Night Baseball on Twins TV, and they did one of those. They had kind of an introduction for the starting lineup, kind of like what they do on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, where it's like, hey, I'm Mike Evans, Texas A&M, wide receiver. You know how they introduce themselves, they say their college. Well, they did that with the baseball players. And as they're doing that, it's like a drone camera going through the stadium, and the players' faces are popping up on the screen. There had to be like 45 people in the building last night in Minnesota. And I think that might even be generous. I've never seen a game look that empty. I've never seen a game at Tropicana Field look as empty as what I saw in Minnesota last night. And I get it. It's really cold. I don't want to go sit out in the cold either. I'm sure they'll get a crowd once it warms up a little bit. But that was, if you're going to do an introduction like that, change up the way you do it. Don't show the crowd. And give all those people in the upper deck, by the way, let them move down into a better seat. They showed up on a 30-degree night. Put them in a better seat. I don't care if they paid for it or not, but that was embarrassing by the Minnesota Twins. All right, opening day yesterday at the Trop. We'll recap everything that went down at Fergs and, of course, inside the Trop, and we'll talk about the game coming up